Great. Shows we're live on YouTube and Facebook, so I just want to check before we actually get kicked off. Excellent. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Happy Thursday. I see with me Parker Brown, Heather Kimsel, and a couple other people that are hopping on here. As you are tuning into the broadcast, please be sure to hit the like button or start commenting so that I can give you some recognition for taking the time out of your day to stay informed on everything going on in and around our community. Today's broadcast is a town hall that we have with two of our partners, the Colorado Aviation Business Association, formerly Jeffco Airport, now the Rocky Mountain Metro Airport, both of which will share kind of updates from their lens on what's going on with their organizations, and then share how COVID affected them, if it has at all, over the last several months. Now, I am Juliette Abdel, President and CEO of the Westminster Chamber of Commerce, and if this is your first time on our page, I hope you continue to return back. Make sure that you hit the like button and the follow so you can get those timely alerts. Be sure to also share this out to your network if you know somebody that might find this of value. These videos are available to you at any point in time to rewind and replay. So if you are interested in rewatching our videos as opposed to binge watching Netflix on the weekends, we like that. Hashtag replay and let us know which videos you find the most of value. I see with us Brian Head. Good afternoon, Brian. Thank you for hopping on. Mike Aguilar, and several other folks. Thank you guys for tuning in. With that, I'm going to go ahead and mute myself and have Chris Swathwood with CABA, I think, right? That's probably how you pronounce the acronym. Share a few words from his end and then transition over to our next guest.
Hi, well, thanks for having me. I'm Chris Walther. I'm with the Colorado Aviation Business Association, and we're an organization here in the state of Colorado that really works with aviation businesses and aviation related businesses, because there's a lot of businesses that aren't directly related to aviation but benefit from the airport. So we kind of work to promote and protect aviation across the state and help kind of show what aviation is about through scholarships, through outreach programs, and then directly working with the airports themselves. So right now we serve and oversee members. So we have about 500 members on 74 of Colorado's public use airports in the state, which helps over the 20,000 pilots in the state of Colorado, base their 6,000 plus aircraft. So really we work with Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport, which near and dear to me. I've grown up at the airport since I was 4 years old, flying with my dad, and did my flight training there. Grew up in Louisville and still fly there today with my own 10-year-old son, who I'm slowly teaching how to fly as well. So we continue to work throughout the state. During COVID, a lot of people probably saw us still flying during the stay-at-home orders. One of the big things for aviation for pilots is FAA currency requirements that we continue to need to maintain throughout the shutdown. And a lot of people say, well, why do you need to do that? Well, aviation is just very unique in the individuals within it. And to keep our currency up, one of the big things that we do is we like to respond to issues that may come up. COVID being one of the big health crises that really needed a response. So a lot of pilots, whether it be our organization in collaboration with Angel Flight West to the Civil Air Patrol, has been working to deliver PPE across the state through collaborated airlifts to individual flights to make sure there's masks for people that need them, other personal protection gear at the hospitals. So general aviation and business aviation really during the COVID time, we shifted from our day-to-day operations to responding to the state's needs. That's been the big thing. During the shutdown, one of the big things we did see is a lot of corporate flight departments scaled back. As businesses scaled back and we moved to the safer at-home orders, people started working from home. So during this whole COVID time, what we've kind of really seen here is these businesses shut down, but they need to keep their crews up to date and current for their flights. So they shifted their mission and their focus from their business to responding to the state and volunteering their services. So you see a lot of that. Again, another big thing that we've seen, obviously, is the wildland fires that continue to go on. And BJC, it's just been a godsend, really, when you look at it. and Paul will talk more about this in a little bit, but the slurry bomber operations have been critical to slowing the spread of these fires throughout the state and more recently within Boulder County. So that's a big thing of what we've seen. But some of the businesses, again, going back to CABA, is the fact that not all our businesses are aviation related. Some of them are hotels, car rentals, local businesses that may be related to aviation in some realm. In fact, Shelter, one of our members up at the airport there, talking to him the other day, and I was talking to him about, hey, have you guys really seen any direct correlation with your guys' operation and local businesses around the area? And they came up with one and said, Big Dog Deli, which is in Broomfield there, said that if it wasn't for the airport, wasn't for Shelter, the other businesses on the airport, the passengers and the pilots and crews coming in, that they don't know if they would have actually made it through the COVID shutdowns. And so that just kind of shows that in the airport's area of influence, these businesses that directly relate to the airport or get direct business from the airport, the critical factor that the airport plays in their livelihood and continuing their success. So for CABA, one of the things we do is really work with these businesses to showcase aviation and how it can continue to build their companies. So that's kind of really what we do and what we're looking at, what we've seen during the COVID time. Again, BJC, and I'll let Paul kind of talk a little bit more about this, about how many based, but within Colorado, we have over 6,700 general business aviation aircraft based in the state. To give you an idea, everyone kind of thinks of aviation as the big commercial airliners and DIA and what they see and they jump on. Commercial airliners in the U.S. only have just over 7,000 total aircraft. So GA and BA plays a critical role. Throughout the U.S., we have over 212,000 general and business aviation aircraft. And again, within the state, just general and business aviation has over 2.4 billion to the state economy and provides over 345,000 jobs just within our state. And again, that's just 74 public use airports. So GA and BA
stay close. Okay, we're about to.
So, Paul, did you have something you wanted to add on that? Sorry, Paul, did I hear you say, did you want to add something in there?
No, we're having technical difficulties, but I think we have it fixed.
Okay, excellent. So yeah, one of the big things we also want to kind of highlight, and I know we have a lot of viewers within the Broomfield area, obviously, and the Superior Rock Creek area. Having grown up in the area, having learned to fly there, and holding that special place for BJC in my heart, one of the big things that I saw working back in my early years of college was the development of the Interlochen area. And Interlochen, and talking to people back in the day, late 90s, early 2000s, with Interlochen developing, the airport played a major role in bringing those companies to Interlochen. It was the airport that created the jobs, such as Sun Microsystem and other companies, GoGo, and all these other companies that are now there because of the ease of access to the airport and being able to get in and out of there much easier than they could going out of DIA. Thus, as we've seen, the continued growth within the Interlochen. A big factor of that is because of the continued growth of BJC. With that, really, if there's any questions on CABA, what we do are scholarships. By the way, anybody that's out there that has a kid that's interested in learning to fly or become an AMP mechanic, which Metropolitan State Airport has a great school for AMPs. CABA's scholarship deadline is October 30th. So you can go to mycaba.org, again, mycaba.org, and you can apply for a scholarship, $3,000 scholarships to help a kid get going with their flight training to their AMP degree. I'll let Paul take it from there, unless you have any questions.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Great job. Thanks, Juliet and Kelly, for setting this up. I appreciate the chance to share our airport. I'm going to try to share a presentation here. Give me a second. Okay, hopefully you guys can see the my screen. Okay, some quick background about the airport. So we were formed in 1960. In the 90s, we went from an airport authority to the Board of County Commissioners run us. Still having some technical difficulties here. Hang on. Okay. Some of the things that we are the fourth busiest. Actually, in 2020, we passed Pueblo and are currently the third busiest airport in Colorado. We are an official reliever for Denver International Airport. We have over 400 based aircraft and approximately 50 businesses located here. You can see some of the logos of the businesses that we operate here, to include the Forest Service. One of the things that I like to point out is we average year in and year out around 300,000 gallons of fuel a month in sales and use for these aircraft. The last 2 months, we've had 560,000 gallons, and we look like we're going to be over 600,000 gallons for the month of October. And what that is 99.9% based on is the U.S. Forest Service fighting fires in the area. So many of you seen the red and white planes flying around. They are working very hard to help the community and save lives and property. And we're very proud to have them as a tenant here at the airport. The other thing I like to point out is CDOT does a economic impact study, and the 2020 study came out, and it's on the bottom of the slide. And basically, we, as an airport, provide $730 million. That's almost $1 billion a year in economic impact to the local area. So as you can tell, we are an economic driver, and much what Chris said, a lot of businesses come to an area based on the airport being here. So we're very, very proud to be part of that partnership. We are a self-supporting enterprise, which means we do not get any tax money. We don't get any money from the county general fund. Everything we spend here, we have to make here. Our budget in 2019 was approximately $5.5 million, and we get those revenues from user fees, investment income, FAA grants, and the FAA has given $70 million in grants in the past 20 years to Rocky Mountain. That's for rehab of runways, taxiways, buildings, the slope at the end of the runway that had collapsed off of 128 several years back. They rehabbed that. ARF truck. So the FAA, again, is part of that partnership. We're very proud to be there. Okay, airport ops. This kind of gives us a short term, about a 20-year period. As you can tell, our operations in 2019 were very robust. We were about 196,000 operations. And if you look at that graph, you can tell what was happening in 2008 and 2009 was the economic disruption of the county and the country. And so our operations went down during that time. And it actually took, as you can see, almost 5 or 6 years before those numbers turned around. And starting in 2014 and 2015, our operations climbed steadily to where we at. So we're averaging about 8 to 10% growth year to year from about 2014. What's interesting to notice, though, is our highest operations were actually almost 250,000 operations back in 1977. And there are other peaks in the early 2000s that were about the same. So some people say that, we've never been busier. This is the worst it's ever been for noise, is actually an incorrect statement. We've actually had multiple years where there are higher operations than there have been in the last decade. Operations during COVID, you can tell we had in 2019 in April, we had 15,000 ops. In 2020, because of the restrictions, those operations went down to 6,000. So a big hit to our airport and to our pilots. In May 19, you can tell there was a recovery there, and we had 13,000 last year and 18,000 in 2020. And then in June we had 17,000, then went up to 22,000. What's important to note is that we had roughly about an 85% reduction in early April and May of our fuel sales from the previous year. We had a roughly operationally, we were down about 50 to 60% because of the restrictions and the stay-at-home orders, which gladly those were rescinded with the help of CABA and AOPA and some other things. And I really appreciate their help because there are good things that are happening with pilots. And we've now recovered. Okay, moving forward. We are always in the airport growth and development. We are a enterprise, so we're like a business. We always got to be growing and getting better. This is from our 2011 airport master plan, and it shows some of the area that's been grown. So if you look at the rectangle box to the right side of the screen, that is where Walther is building their FBO, our second one, which we're very proud and happy to have. And then on the left side of the screen is what we're calling the aviation portion and VER, which is, if you're familiar with the area, FedEx is on airport property. So we own that 500 plus acres, of which 170 is to develop for aviation and about 450 is to develop for commercial and light industrial. Here's a picture of our grand opening that happened in just a few months back. The picture on top is their what they call terminal. And so planes can come up under that porte cochere and offload their passengers. And then their hangar for transients and permanent is on the lower picture. Beautiful, beautiful facility that we're very proud of. And we see that being a cornerstone of our aviation portion of the airport. We're also very happy and very lucky to have Pilatus Aviation here at the airport. They opened their new facility in July 2018. I'm sure you can see it if you've driven down 128. They have terminal office and hangar space, and they fly the planes from Switzerland over to Colorado, Rocky Mountain, and they paint them and finish them and get them ready for delivery to their customers. So that South Side Aviation development area, we originally came up with this sort of schematic in 2018 and sort of got a basic layout of how we could develop out that 170, roughly acres. There's some manufacturing over there. There's some large hangars over there, possible FBO and terminal over there, and plenty of GA. So it's a good mix of things. And, that was how we kind of kicked off how we would start developing that airport to make sure this airport stays efficient and capable. Follow on about a year and a half later, we've got a 3D rendering of kind of what that area would look like. Again, there's a good mix of all kinds of different aviation operations over there. Plenty of opportunity that will bring in not only businesses to the airport, but bring businesses to the local area. We never sleep. So here at the airport, we're 24/7. And to make things, functional for our pilots, we added a new Romeo 2 connector. We did that this summer, and it's complete. You can see the green area is where the Walther development is occurring. And then the sort of orange area is our taxiway that's being redesigned this year and will be reconstructed next year because it's gotten some substructure failures. So we are always constantly working on our infrastructure, our growth, our development, and making this the safest, most capable aircraft in the country. I used to say in the state, but now we say in the country. So with that, I will exit out of the slide, and basically that's all I have.
Paul, and real quick, one thing I'd like to add too with what we've seen with COVID and everything else going on, that the airport always has done since I've grown up and worked there, that a lot of people don't realize is the airport acts as a vital, critical hub for air medical. Many people don't realize that our rural counties rely on BJC for transport of critical care patients. Helicopters are great when you're in a metro area. But when you're in a rural area or the mountains, or if you're up mountain biking and you crash and you need that critical care that the mountains can't provide, you're probably coming over in a King Air or a Learjet or some other type of air ambulance that rapidly brings you into the critical care services that the metropolitan area provides. And I don't know how many times I've seen injured children get life lighted in and loaded into a helicopter and straight out to children. So more than just responding to COVID, which we sent hundreds of thousands of masks out of BJC, to responding to the fires, but everyday medical issues. Every day you'll see ambulances going in and out of BJC, picking up critical care patients. So the airport is vital to the entire state and being able to provide those services. So that's another big thing that people don't often relate an airport to.
Absolutely, Chris. Good point.
So with that, yeah, I'll carry on the questions.
Well, thank you, Chris. Of course, yeah. Thank you, Chris and Paul, for that. I see Counselor Seymour is on here with us. I also see Brad. Up on my end. While it's trying to pull up, the question that Brad has is that he actually has included a YouTube link for us. And he says the noise specifically from training flights has increased many-fold this spring and summer, flying directly over Walnut Grove of RMAA. Can you please speak to this, Mr. Andlink, as well into the comments?
Sure, Brad. So our flights probably did seem like they increased significantly in the spring and summer, especially when you compare it to the lull of April and May. But again, historically, we are going up from last year. I think we're going to beat last year's operations by a couple thousand. But when you think about, we do over 500 operations a day, a couple thousand is not that many. And whether they're flying directly over Walnut Grove, one of the important things to remember is within 5 miles of the airport, those airplanes are under control of the air traffic control tower, and they are following those instructions. And if you talk to any air traffic controller across the world, their number one concern is safety. And so they are going to do everything they can to make sure these pilots get in and get out efficiently and safely to our airport, or to any airport, actually.
You know, and I would jump in too quick on that as a pilot. Definitely in the summer, and what we've seen with COVID and a lot of us working from home now. As a pilot myself, and I spent a long time talking to several representatives on this that expressed some concern as well. Summer's an interesting time in the Rockies for us as pilots, especially training pilots. Afternoons are brutally violent to go fly. It's hot. We have high density altitude. Aircraft don't perform well, and the turbulence and thunderstorms does not create a conducive or safe environment for flight. So a lot of times we'll fly very early in the morning to get out of there when the air is cool. And then comes winter and things change drastically. We have to de-ice aircraft, and now our flights move to the afternoon when the heat of the day is warmed up and the air is a little bit nicer, and allows us to get out and to perform better training in the afternoon. So there is a little bit of an offset, and I think a lot of people see in the summer, they say, you know, they're out, they're not traveling to work right now, they're working from home, so you get to enjoy your awesome cup of coffee and save all that gas from driving. But now we also hear a little bit more of what we didn't notice previously. That's been happening for years and years just because we were commuting before. So I do think some of our things in our lives have changed, that we've noticed what's been normal for a very long time has now just, we see it, unfortunately.
So Brad does have a follow-up to our comments that first question.
So
thank you both for addressing that. It's a two-part comment I will tag on this here.
Yeah, so I thought I addressed it. A lot of it is the operations of the firefighters. They're going in and out of here at record pace. And again, I think it's a perception, as Chris mentioned, that you're home, and when you would maybe be downtown in your office, you're hearing planes flying over that have always flown over, but you're more exposed to them. But our numbers are not, I would not call it a huge increase over last year's or the year before's number of operations.
More about that, because Brad's comment was, he's a longtime resident, it looks like this year's, and so I think he's referencing that over the time that he's been here, he hasn't seen it to that extent that's there. Is it just, projected that we're ramping up kind of back to where we were? Is there just a continued demand from various things, from the fires to the COVID response and interest in, flights and things like that?
Yeah, and COVID, again, is going to play a role in that. As we talked about it a little bit earlier, and I mentioned the air medical, we're definitely seeing some of that happen as well. And again, the flight schools actually decreased a little bit because of the COVID restrictions, and the flight schools closed down for quite a while because of the safer at home orders. We did see quite a bit of and there's a misconception too, let me clarify something. Flight school aircraft aren't always instructing. There's a lot of people that are pilots. Not everyone can own a plane, and me for one. And so I rent from the flight schools and fly. So when I'm out doing my currency FAA flights, me and my kiddo, I'm not conducting flight training, even though that aircraft may be used for a flight training flight right after me. Those aircraft are more of club type of planes. So we did see a little bit of that. I think there was some stir crazy, and some people are like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to go get my currency. I'm going to go do some touch and goes. We are required to do so many touch and goes every so often to keep our currency both day and night. And so I do think we saw a little bit of that, of just standard pilots going out and flying. But again, those increases also of the medical flights, the PPE flights, and then the continued increase of the flights for the fire operations this year.
All the types of flights that you have, do you track as far as how many of those flights are training, how many are fire, how many are PPE response, etc.? And if we do have that data, is that somewhere that people can access that?
We do not track that to that level. Like Chris said, a flight may go out with an instructor and a student. That same plane may go out an hour and a half, 2 hours later with a pilot on a cross country or any other flight. And there's no way humanly possible to track what every flight and plane and helicopter is doing when they depart this airport. Just like cars on a highway, there's no way for you to tell me that 10 cars are going to King Supers and 10 to the hardware store and 10 to work. It's not a metric that there's any way to possibly track.
Yeah, and with the PPE flights, it looks like we lost her for a second there. With the PPE flights, a lot of those are just private individuals. Angel Flight, for those that don't know, Angel Flight is a charity group where pilots that own their own aircraft or may rent aircraft actually donate their time. And in non-COVID times, they were much more active with getting people to important medical services that don't have a means to get there. So cancer patients getting flown, those aren't really tracked in any metric, because again, those are private individuals operating under the volunteer program of the Angel Flight. And now we got Julia back. We'll kick over to the next question.
So I think Juliet's having a few technical issues here, so she asked me to read this next question out loud. It's from Linda. What is the definition of an operation? Is each circle over the house counted as a single operation or multiple operations?
So operations are considered a takeoff or landing. Again, what a pilot does with that plane, as long as he's complying with FAA rules and regulations, is not counted. sightseeing, flying cross country, delivering PPE. None of that is tracked as an operation. The operation from the airport perspective is a touchdown or a takeoff.
All right, we have one here from Jay. Can you tell us what proportion of the operations are training flights in 2019-20 as opposed to other busy years? Does a set of 15 touch and go landings count as 15 operations or just one?
You want to take one, Chris?
Nope, I'll let you take that.
Okay. Again, there's no way to track what a aircraft is doing when it departs this airport. Much like when you leave your garage, there's no way to track where you're going. So I do not know what the proportion is to say what is a training flight. And even the training planes, as people seem to assume that every plane that belongs to a flight school is doing training, they may be training, they may be looking at fires. There are multiple missions that planes and helicopters can do. So again, there is no way for us to track that. And 15 touch and goes would be considered 15 operations.
Yeah, and to give you an idea, again, like Paul's saying, I'm going to use, and multiple flight school planes are going to get used next month. One of the big things we do through CABA is our charity airlift to support veterans, families in need across the state. And we typically have about 30 aircraft airlifting over 15,000 pounds of food and toys to veterans, families, and homeless vets across the state of Colorado, especially in our rural communities. So you might see a flight or an aircraft that is normally used for flight training being used by one of these individuals, donating their time to airlift these supplies out into the rural parts of the counties and the state, and even to the western slopes. So again, as Paul was saying, it's really hard to see what the plane is doing. Once it's in the air, it's like going out and jumping in your car. It's just really hard to judge what that car is doing, where it's going, as long as it follows the rules, as Paul has mentioned. So again, a lot of these operations, pilots are very, very giving people. It's amazing how giving they are, and they look for reasons to fly, and when flying, to give back, whether it's Pilots for Paws, which is another huge thing that we do, and a lot of flight school planes get used on all the time, helping to bring rescue animals and saving them from kill shelters. Pilots they're passionate people about flying and about giving back and helping others. So Pilots and Paws, Angel Flight, charity airlifts, there's just no idea what's actually going on with that flight. Looks like we got another question there as well.
Yeah, this is from Sharon. Question is, how is it that nobody can track how long they are flying with no adjustment? I'm assuming she means with no adjustment from the air traffic control.
Well, as Paul mentioned earlier with the FAA, once you're in the controlled airspace, you're operating under the FAA guidelines and under the FAA's control. It's not like driving your car. You jump in your car and you've got a sign that says how fast you can go. When we jump in our plane, we got somebody telling us and monitoring and watching us, and especially in controlled airspace, we're at their control to a pretty large degree, and they are the ones that are really controlling that airspace. Once we get up and out of the lower airspace of the class Delta airspace, which is what is around Rocky Mountain Metropolitan, old habit, and or DIA, you start getting into, you get up and out of that. You're being controlled. You are a highway in the sky, and you have a controller directing you where you are going. The only times that we don't have that is when we're out doing maybe some training flights, doing our ground reference maneuvers. Again, we have to maintain an altitude that the FAA recommends. I do know that there's been some issues where people are seeing what we call indicated altitude versus pressure altitude. A lot of the technology that you now see nowadays reports in pressure altitude. Aircraft only use pressure altitude above 18,000 feet. Below 18,000 feet, we use what is called indicated altitude. And that is what the air traffic controllers assign us. Below 18,000 is our indicated altitude. And indicated altitude is what our altimeter actually shows. And that's our legal altitude. So while we do have some instruments that report out with this new technology that everyone's jumping onto, that technology reports an altitude typically 300 feet lower than what our actual indicated altitude is. So a lot of times people think an aircraft is much lower and operating at a much lower altitude than it truly is. And that again is because the technology that we use works great above 18,000, but the rules are different below 18,000, and our instruments that we use are our altimeter versus our ADS-B and other sources. So Paul, anything you want to add on to that as well?
No, I think you nailed it, Chris and Kelly.
Okay, we have a question here now from State Representative Tracy Kraft Tharp. She asks, the neighbors are not feeling heard and disagree that it's about being home in the mornings now. Could you do a town meeting and listen to them and come up with some creative solutions?
Great to see you. Hope everything's going well with you. It's love talking to you, and yeah, I think that's a great idea. I would be open to it. I know Paul has been working on some things actually. Unfortunately, as we all know, COVID has not been kind to us with allowing us to do these type of things. But as we get more comfortable with virtual things, I think this is something that we might be able to investigate. And Paul, I'll let you kind of carry on from there on that one.
So a follow-up to that, Chris, thank you for the intro and good points, is Rocky Mountain Metro with Jefferson County, Boulder County, and all the surrounding communities started back in early 2020 on a noise roundtable to address just that, so that people could come out and tell us what they were feeling and seeing, and that we could come up with some creative solutions. It got derailed with COVID. We kind of kick-started it in July, and we are very close. I won't tell you which municipality has not signed the bylaws and IGA yet, but I believe we're down to 1 out of 9 municipalities and counties. And so if they can get that signed, we are very close from holding our first public noise roundtable. We are projecting January, just to be safe, but I actually think we may make a December meeting, and I think that would be a super awesome thing to get up and running with the towns and really try to tackle this situation.
Excellent.
We have another question here. I guess this is a comment from Brian. I've grown up in this area and enjoy living near the airport and seeing all the aircraft.
Thanks, Brian. You know, not really a question,
Not really
Stable, but I'm going to jump on that one real quick. Brian, for those that are really want to learn more about the airport, one thing CABA, again, does, we like to really work on the community outreach. So what we were planning for this year, and again, unfortunately, COVID, we are planning at multiple airports coming in 2021, provided the restrictions lift and we can, is a Experience Colorado Aviation Day. And what we really want to do is we're working with the local businesses at the airports to showcase the jobs, have job openings. So if people are interested in learning more about careers at the airport, but also allow people to come out and experience flight. Free flights is what we're going to be working on. Get you up in the airspace, see what it looks like, see what the altitudes in the air, see how the air control system works, and how the controllers are controlling the aircraft through the airspace, and just get a chance to really get out. One of the greatest things about Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport that I've always loved growing up and with my kids is it's a public airport. It's not like DIA. You can't go out to DIA and walk out and have a great lunch at Blue Sky Bistro there in the terminal and sit in the grass and watch the fire bombers sit right there. Just sit and watch them. Talk to the pilots as they come in and grab their own lunch. The accessibility to aviation is right in your backyard, and it is just a great thing. So take advantage of that. And Paul welcomes people out all the time to come out and experience aviation at one of your airports, whether it's Centennial or whether it's Rocky Mountain Metropolitan. Come out and see what aviation has and all the jobs. I don't think Paul mentioned, but there's over 2,000 jobs just on Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport. And that doesn't even touch the airport's area of influence, all the jobs that support the airport in the local area. So again, we're going to be looking at June timeframe to try to get everybody out. We're going to blast it out to everybody in there. And if you live within the airspace, this is only for if you live within the airspace area, we're going to be offering some free flights. So we're still working on planning on that, but we'll have that coming out soon.
All right, a follow-up from Representative Kraft-Tharp. The bylaws for the roundtable have public comment only quarterly. Meeting with the neighbors would be helpful. So I think that's what we're looking at. And Brian had also mentioned that the Blue Sky Bistro is also awesome.
So Brian, thank you. I think Blue Sky is awesome. And Chris and the CABA team is awesome also, because when he approached me early last year about doing that aviation day, we supported it wholeheartedly and teamed up, and think it would be a great experience to get people out and young kids maybe get interested in a career in aviation, neighbors to see what aviation looks like. So it's not going away. We're going to stick to it. And like I said, hopefully we can do something like that in 2021. And CABA took the leading edge and did a fantastic job of planning that, and just got kind of derailed with COVID.
Now from Linda, giving back and helping is awesome. I think the issue for many in the neighborhood
and Linda,
is the training flights.
I'll kind of jump on that as well. One of the big things is we need our regional airports. Unfortunately, we can't train at DIA. They just won't allow it. We try to go out there and fly, but they just don't let us. So we need the regional airports. We need the smaller airports for training flights to be conducted, whether, it's Centennial Airport, BJC, Boulder, the other airports. We need these reliever airports to provide these, not only training, because without training, we're never going to have new pilots. We're not going through a pilot shortage right now. We have been for many years. But COVID has kind of scaled things back on the airlines. So we're in a temporary reprieve on our pilot shortage. But as soon as things start getting kicked back off and back to normal, the airlines are going to be scrambling to try to find pilots again. And if we don't keep that pipeline filled, it's going to cause a problem. So one of the big things we do face is we have one of the biggest and greatest aviation schools in the area, down at Metropolitan State University, and then we've got another one up in Greeley. So we've got multiple flight training operations moving through the area. But again, without the regional airports and without the flight training, that next trip to Cancun, that next trip to Hawaii, or that next trip to go see family on the holidays is going to become that much harder if we don't keep the pilots trained and moving forward into the careers.
Another question we've been asking, if one or both of you could speak some about how the industry and the airport have put COVID measures in place, specifically how you're keeping employees, students for the flight schools, customers, how you're keeping everybody safe.
I'll go ahead and kick it off, Chris, and then you can take it. So, we here at the airport we belong to Jefferson County, so we're following their measures. And, we've instituted social distancing, carry out only for the restaurant. Our staff works as minimum togetherness. So we've altered our shifts to work separate shifts, so there's less people in a space at one time. And we basically have, sanitized equipment that's being turned over. So following all of those guidelines that the Jefferson County Public Health puts out has, knock on wood, kept everyone here at the airport and the airport staff safe so far.
And on the business and general aviation side of that, we've had a lot of companies that have shifted some of their focus and some of the things that they have done in the past to now decontaminating and sterilizing aircraft. With the flight schools, you'll see they go out, they wipe the aircraft down in between flights. Everyone's doing their part to really stop the spread. And that's one of the big things, is wearing the masks, stopping, wiping everything down, keeping things disinfected. And that happens throughout. Nobody, we're traveling. We don't want to get shut down again. So we're doing everything we can to continue to be cognizant of what's going on in the world with the pandemic, even when we're responding, when we're flying those COVID flights, to just cleaning and sterilizing the aircraft, if they're a shared aircraft, and then decontaminating. In the offices, what I've seen, same type of things that they're doing within the terminal building in the Jeffco office there. It's social distancing. A lot of people are working from home if they can. If they're aircraft mechanics, you can't work from home. Can't really take the airplane home with you and do the work. So they're maintaining their social distancing and following the state guidelines.
Also, if one or both of you could talk a little bit about how the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, may impact business and general aviation long-term, or aviation in general, and how that could kind of translate either to growth or restriction in the general aviation industry?
Yeah, so interesting. That's a great question. First of all, Argus did a great survey a couple months back. Business aviation and general aviation, we're actually expecting a recovery to start happening by the end of this month. Our numbers are actually really good as a lot of people continue to operate and fly. And it's just like driving your car. You know, you might not get on a bus right now, but you're probably going to drive your own car because you're safe, you're within your own environment. Same with general aviation. On the other side, the commercial aviation side, we're probably looking at a recovery closer to 2024 is what they're expecting. But again, many things can change. Everything can change in a moment's notice with anything. But on business and general aviation, business continues to operate and continues to grow. And we do expect a recovery within the end of the month, probably. Paul, what have you seen on your side?
Chris, we've seen the same thing. Pretty big hits early on in the spring and the summer, but business jets and I think your analogy was perfect. People still need to travel. They just don't want to travel commercially if they can do it another way. So there's been a lot of business jets, a lot of personal aircraft that are making up. You know, instead of going to fly home for to see grandma for Thanksgiving, people are going to take a charter flight or their own plane to avoid those commercial airlines. So our recovery, we've seen it, and I think you're right on with your numbers.
I'm going to try and speak this time. Hopefully everyone can hear me fine. And if you guys cannot hear me fine, please comment like Parker did earlier. We've had a lot of questions that were on here, a lot of great conversation and dialogue. I don't want to lose sight that many of you have come back with a few different questions and comments. It's lagging me a little bit, so I'm not trying to overlook it, but I do want to share, Paul and Chris, thank you for being on here with us. Brad has shared into the comment section an Explore page for the residents and some of their concerns that are there. And I know several of these people that have been commenting on reiterate the importance of having the airport, of course, with some of their concerns that they have. So what I'll also do is tag your organizations and yourselves to this video so that you can connect with them as a follow-up after this video so that some of those conversations can continue and hopefully we can all find some sort of a solution. I know a lot of it also has to do with that we're at home. It's during COVID, and so we're working remotely and every little sound or other thing might be an interference. So we definitely understand that might be a concern that's there. Are there any last minute comments that either Paul or Chris would like to go ahead and share with us before I completely close out our broadcast?
Before I give it over to Paul real quick, because he's kind of more important, I'm just going to say again, if you're interested in aviation or you have a young one interested in aviation that might be headed off to college, our scholarships, we do several $3,000 scholarships every year. The deadline is October 30th, and that's at mycaba.org. Again, mycaba.org. And watch for more information coming from us on the Experience Colorado Aviation Day this summer. And Paul, I'll let you close it out.
All right, Chris, thank you. Juliet, Kelly, thank you so much for setting this up and giving us the opportunity to discuss aviation in general and Rocky Mountain Metro Airport in specific. I appreciate the questions. What I would say is feel free, if you are on here, to reach out to myself or my staff and come out and get a tour of the airport. I try to make time to meet people and talk about what's going on and why things are happening. And so feel free to come on out and say hi, and we'll show you the airport. And like Chris said, we're one of the most amazing airports in the country. We've got the best view you can imagine, and we're very proud of it here. And I'd like to see all of you come on out and say hi.
And I'd just like to say, I know I make a awfully unsatisfactory substitute for Juliet, but I was happy to help as much as I could. And thank you, Juliet and the Westminster Chamber, for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So we are closing out our town hall for today. We will be back on here, as many of you are aware. Our live broadcasts are generally at 11 a.m. Every now and then we like to throw you a curveball at 4 or 4:30 to see if you're following and with us and paying attention. 11 a.m. tomorrow is going to focus on our Adams County Treasurer's Office. They'll be sharing updates from their department, how COVID affected them, some of the resources that are available to the residents and the overall community. So please be sure to come back on here with us tomorrow at 11 a.m. And as Paul and Chris have shared, and I have reiterated, I always appreciate varying perspectives and concerns, please bring them forward. I think the best way that we can all move together forward is if we know what the needs are that are out there in the community. So as events are set up and notices are made public, I will be sure to also try and incorporate those so that you guys are informed and stay on top of it and be interactive with them and continue to voice any thoughts, concerns, or comments that you might have, whether they be negative, positive, or just overall your sentiments and feelings. So I appreciate all of you. I know Jay, Sharon, Brad, AC Craftfire, Brian, and numerous others that have tuned into this broadcast. Thank you for your patience with our tech difficulties, and I will see everybody tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Thank you.